Alec, there's that old Irish adage, great oaks from humble acorns do grow. And this acorn started in 1987 with your college thesis. I alluded to it earlier, but you wrote your thesis on the first neural network poker bot.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because
Yeah,
Matt's
absolutely.
been known to dabble at the poker table from now and again.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? So I was basically teaching AI to play poker, bet, bluff, things like that. I never got it to more than kind of an average human because obviously it's not going to know Matt's tells, right? You know, that he kind of winks whenever he's got a good hand or whatever it is, right?
He usually orders a shot of tequila whenever he has 4 kings.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Launch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, today is going to be a really, really contemporary, top of mind, newsworthy conversation. We've got Alec Crawford. Alec Crawford is co-founder and CEO of Artificial Intelligent Risk, AI Risk, whose platform gives CISOs a single cockpit for Gen AI safety, cybersecurity, and SEC-ready governance.
Yeah, awesome.
To tell you the truth, the reason he's really on the podcast is his Harvard senior thesis in 1987 was about a first neural network poker bot. All right.
Yeah,
so we're gonna have
exactly.
a real nice conversation. Alec, welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Great to be here, Lou. This is awesome.
Alec, you know, I did a little bit of research about your reputation and your career. I think I know where I want to start this conversation. You are credited with this wonderful quote: "If fraud were a country, it would be the world's 3rd largest economy."
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So let's do a deep dive there.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is fraud last year was probably around $7 trillion stolen. Now, a lot of that is through cryptocurrency, but it's also, you know, hacking people's bank accounts or convincing someone to wire you money via a deep fake, which happened in Hong Kong last year for $24 million. And that would put it second only to China. So it's basically the US is the world's largest economy, and then there's China, and then there's fraud. Wow, 3rd largest scary economy, which is crazy. And but this is frankly how it went from kind of random hackers and people like Robert Morris creating, you know, worms on the internet, maybe accidentally crashing everything, to nation states using fraud to make money. I mean, North Korea is a great example, right? Where they literally have thousands of people and it's their only job to figure out, like, how do you bring hard currency into North Korea, right? No matter how illegal.
So Alec, years ago, a bank used to have a vault. You just had to make a more sophisticated vault to keep the bank robbers out. What is today, in summer of 25, what is today's more sophisticated vault?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think that let's start with kind of some really basic cybersecurity principles, right? Like, you want at a minimum 2, if not 3-factor authentication for anything to do with money, for anything to do with cryptocurrency, obviously for anything to do with securities or investments. So what does that mean? So what's 1-factor authentication? That's Lou logging in with his email and his password. Eventually someone's going to find or crack your password, and then they have access to your bank account. That's not good. So the second method of authentication there is typically some kind of token. So you've all heard of, you know, authenticators, right? So that could be Microsoft Authenticator or Duo Mobile or Google Authenticator. Almost doesn't matter which one. It sits on your phone, right? And when you try to log in with your password, it says, okay, Lou, now you got to put in your authentication token, and you type that in. And maybe it's good for 30 days or whatever on your computer. But the point is, even someone with your password can't log in. And if they try to log in and don't have the right authentication token, it will tell you on an email, hey, someone tried to log in. Like, someone's got your password. So you know that you need to change it or your bank needs to do something. So that's something that you have, a password. or something that you know, a password, something you have, an authenticator. And then the third for three-factor authentication is something unique about you. So that could be a fingerprint, or it could be an iris scan, or the scanning, the facial scanning that your iPhone or iPad does when it unlocks. So if you do all three of those, that's the ultimate right now, three-factor authentication. Very, very hard for anybody to crack that. And it's kind of like the old joke about, the father, the son go camping, and they pass the park warden. The park warden's like, look, if you see any bears, stand still, look big, and try to scare the bear away. And they go, okay, yep. And they come upon a bear, and the son starts running as fast as he can in the opposite direction. The dad's looking at him, running after him, going, but the park ranger said we're supposed to stand still. And the kid says, I don't have to run as fast as the bear, Dad, just faster than you. So that's what 2 and 3-factor authentication for. You're not going to stop a determined thief, even with 2-factor authentication, but you're just so much harder. They're going to go find someone easier who's not doing that.
It's so crazy because it's everybody from large governments all the way down to small business that can be hacked these days. If you see what happened, yes. It was just reported today by the Wall Street Journal. President Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, was hacked. They hacked her voice, they hacked her phone, and they were sending text messages to law enforcement agencies, senior executives, right? Yeah, trying to gather information about the campaign, right?
Crazy. Well, more than a year ago, every senior person at Microsoft got hacked. Their email got hacked. And that happened because, guess what? They exempted themselves from the 2-factor authentication policy. They were only using passwords. That's it.
Love that.
I get it.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
The cobbler had holes in his shoes. Look at that.
I get it, though. It's so annoying. I'm one to do it, too. I'm like, I don't want to be bothered with that, right? But it's a very expensive lesson to learn.
Yeah, well, at this point, it's so good, especially the single sign-on systems like Microsoft. If you're on a laptop or a computer and you log in with Microsoft Entra ID or SSO, it's not going to ask you for a token again for a month, right? That's reasonable. Now, if you take your laptop, get in a plane, and go to Indianapolis and log in, it's going to ask you for a token again because you're in a different place, right? So it's pretty smart now in terms of when's it going to ask. Now, there are other systems which are less sophisticated. Like I have a broker system. It's literally asking me every freaking time I go to that screen. It is super annoying, and I agree with you on that one. But the good ones are really good and much less annoying today. And at some point, we're going to get to a point where we've got passwordless authentication, right? Like we're years away from that still, but we're going to get there because by 2035, quantum computing is going to allow the hacking of any traditional password, right? So it just won't be. It'll be worthless.
That's actually a big concern for Bitcoin right now, right? With the way quantum computing is speeding up, they'll be able to hack into Bitcoin. They're saying, I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that's a big concern. I don't follow that as much. What I would say is that criminals go where the money is, right? Okay. There's a lot of money in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And you don't have to do a lot of quantum computing hacking to make a lot of money. So yeah, I'd be worried about that, whether that's 2032, 2035, or 2040. I don't know, but at some point that encryption standard will fall.
It's coming.
Alec, what would that look like in 2035 with no sort of authentication? Like, how would you log on to a device or a platform?
Yeah, look, there are other people that are way more sophisticated about this than I am. But what I would say is it would be effectively pre-stored on your device, right? So it might be a 100-character code that sits on your laptop, as well as some kind of authenticator like we're talking about before, as well as something unique about you, iris scan, fingerprint, facial recognition, whatever it is. But I'm sure, look, the Microsofts of the world are going to be, and the Googles of the world are going to be duking it out over what that standard is. it's not going to be people like me and you.
The scammers are getting AI is empowering them more and more. We're not getting broken English emails anymore. Let's put it that way, where you can sort them out. I know a company that I just heard of this week that's in our space with me and Luigi in the financial services space. Every team member got a DocuSign, and it's weird. They don't usually send their team members DocuSigns. A bunch of them opened up, and they had a breach.
Yeah, no, DocuSign it's not actually really DocuSign, obviously, but all these signing spams, it's just rampant right now. And I probably get a couple a day.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening is, look, if you were Microsoft or Google, one of your jobs is filtering out spam and filtering out phishing attacks like this. But there are areas that are weak spots, and DocuSign is one of them, because when they see DocuSign, they're just like, okay, well, look, it must be something someone needs to sign. This is really important. We can't drop it in the spam folder. We can't drop it in the other folder just in case. And the bad guys are taking advantage of that. And until Microsoft and Google, et cetera, and the other email providers can have a good way of differentiating between, a scam and a real DocuSign, we're going to continue to have this problem. This is actually a broader problem, obviously, that, for example, banks are dealing with. So if you ask yourself right now, like, what's fraud like at banks? It is rampant, right? It's rampant. There are attacks. There are dozens, hundreds, thousands of attacks every day. I'm not talking about cybersecurity attacks on their firewall. I'm talking about people being impersonated and the hackers asking the bank for money. Please wire money here. Please send money there. I need a new checkbook, whatever it is, right? And one of the things that banks need to be able to do is very quickly triage emails coming in for this looks real versus this looks like it's a hacking attempt. Because if they can't do it, how are you going to have your 100 customer service people, many of whom have less than 6 months of service or on the job training, differentiate that? You have no shot of being able to do that, right? You're going to have computers help. And then that whole chain of, all right, we blocked a transaction because it looks fraudulent. Well, now we got to tell the customer in case it was real, right? Now the customer comes back and says, oh, actually, I was trying to do that. That whole workflow is incredibly, incredibly complicated, whether or not it was fraud, right?
So, we have there's a company in our industry that actually, when they go and they fund a client, they do a live FaceTime with them, right? That actually scans the biometrics of the client compared to everything else that comes in. That's one way they're protecting themselves. But it's still, you really never know who you're talking to. And it's frustrating on everybody's point. The bank's losing money. The customer's frustrated if it was real, right? They're probably going to move to a different bank if that's the case. And the craziest thing that I've seen recently and I read about was Ransomware-as-a-service. You don't have to make your ransomware anymore. Now you can just rent it.
Yeah, that's the other part of look, AI is great in terms of programming. I mean, I am a developer, but when I was developing the prototype of our software a couple of years ago, it probably sped up my progress by a factor of 2. Now that's more like 10 or 20, right? Like the ability to program better more quickly or not program at all. Vibe coding is amazing, but obviously, look, it's also facilitating the ability of the bad guys to do the same thing, right? And I think going back to cybersecurity, one of the things that is not used as often, but is very important for people to know about is deepfakes, right? You can look on YouTube and see something that's obviously not Donald Trump, watching what's obviously not, Elon Musk's feet, right? Like, clearly that's not real. But what if that's your bank president or your CEO calling the CFO going like, hey, I need you to wire some money somewhere, right? like the fakes have gotten good enough. And if you don't know that exists as a CFO or someone who works in the CFO's office, you might go, oh, okay, boss, no problem. I'll wire that money, right? We're going to start to need things like code words, like, hey, if you're calling me from Bora Bora and telling me I need to wire money, you need to give me the code word. Otherwise, I'm not doing it.
Listen, we have a code word with our kids if somebody else picks them up and they don't know what it is, right? So it's like, hey, if they don't say this word, you don't go with them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's totally the right thing to do. I mean, what's amazing to me, going back to AI, is it's really democratizing a whole bunch of things, whether it's coding or ability to look at data. And as a small and medium business owner, whether you're technical or not, you better find someone who's at least a little bit technical to help you out here. They don't need to be a software developer, but they have to be willing to kind of like get into that AI universe and play around a little bit and see what they can do and see what they can find to help you.
Alec, what would you identify as the most obvious security gaps that small to medium-sized business owners miss or suffer from?
Yeah, I would say it's primarily, so most of the attack vectors are via email, right? So if you have something that can scan through an email and just go, look, that looks fake, right? And there are services that will do that and just basically not let it go through. The other obvious thing is just turn off all the links, which Microsoft Office will let you do. Turn off graphics and links, so you're not going to accidentally click on something, or you have to think really hard before you click on something, like a DocuSign, like a fake DocuSign or something like that.
Invoices too. I see invoices, PayPal. I see them come through all the time. Hey, your payment's overdue. It's an invoice. I got to click on it to see what it is, right? It's insane.
Yeah. So again, like if it's really important, they'll contact you by phone, or they'll contact you some other way.
Yeah,
right?
but who answers their phone anymore?
Yeah. Well, then they'll leave me a voicemail, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm assuming that like every single invoice, most DocuSigns, like unless I know the person who it's theoretically from, are going to be scams at this point. And then it's really the other thing we talked about before, which is, two-factor authentication, right? If you don't have that,
Yeah.
Set up for your bank account and pretty much everything else you do in your life, you're just asking for trouble, because at some point your password's going to be outed for something, and then you're going to get hacked for sure. The other thing I'd say is that, many small and medium business owners are comfortable delegating payment authority to other people at their company. You just want to limit that as much as possible. If someone clicks on an invoice because they think it's real and they send out money from the bank account because they're not the sharpest tool in the shed or didn't figure it out, oh, well, shame on them. But shame on you if you empower 10 people at your company to be able to do that. You want to limit that to you, the business owner, and maybe one or two other people at max. And then you want to put all kinds of limits on that to the extent that you can. Well, one of the things that the government authorities and cybersecurity experts try to do is not just prevent fraud, but also create delays in terms of when you're paying something. In other words, let's say you get a bill, right? Don't pay that bill right away if you think it might be fraudulent. Put it over the side, think about it, do some research, hand it off to someone else to take a look at it and say, does this look real? Like the worst thing is being in a rush to do something, because that's when you're going to make mistakes, right? So that's one thing. And that's also why a bank may call you up and say, hey, Lou, you just sent a wire for $100,000. We're just checking to make sure you really meant to do that, and that was really you. And by the way, did you check that the other person on the other side's not a scammer? Because we can't get that money back, right? So they're started to do more of this kind of blocking payments while they check, because they don't want to be liable. And I'll tell you something that happened to me. I walked into a bank with my dad the other day, and I can't remember what he was doing. I think he was just cashing a check or something like that, right? And they're like, is everything okay? Who's this with you? And he just see my ID as well as my dad's ID. They were making sure I wasn't a scammer, right? Going in there and getting some old guy to cash a check and then walk away with the money, right? So they're definitely, the banks are definitely picking up on elder fraud and elder abuse and things like that, and being way more cautious in person. Pretty hard for them to do that not in person if they're getting an email, right? Or getting a text message saying, hey, I need some money.
Yeah.
Right. Or I want to wire some money, and they're just using a computer program or whatever. Very much harder.
So, I mean, it's a real uphill battle, like you were saying, when you have countries like Eastern Europe, North Korea, everywhere. This is their job. We walk into office buildings. This is their job every single day to go in and try to scam somebody, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, absolutely. And I think that, look, there's a lot of things we can do as individuals, which is really, and a lot of that's just talking to the older generation and just saying, look, there are lots of scams. If you get a text saying you didn't pay a toll, it's not real,
yep.
right? Like if you get an email saying, hi, it's your grandson, I'm in Nigeria, send me money, it's not real, right? Because they don't, unless you tell them, they don't really know. They're not, sitting there reading the news and blogs about cybersecurity, right? So that's kind of step one. Step two is you can also limit the damage just by having limited amounts in certain accounts. Like I'll give you an example. I've got an account that I pay bills out of. It has just enough to pay bills out of it. The rest of the money is in different places that no one knows anything about, right? The other thing you can do as a small business owner, if you have lots of cash kicking around, is you can buy T-bills. No one can steal your T-bill from the government, right? And the T-bill just pays off back into your bank account, when you need it. If you never have more than 20 grand in your bank account, no one can steal more than 20 grand. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Absolutely. I totally get it. I question myself, are we going back to the age of intranet and not the internet, or at least for something, right?
That's a
We're
really great
isolated.
question. And this comes back to, it's actually a broader question. It's really about trust, right? So we're entering, or have already entered, an era where trust has dramatically declined, right? I don't know if I can trust what someone's saying on TV is true or not, right? I don't. Whereas 20 years ago, if you were watching the nightly news, everything was gospel.
If it was Tom Brokaw saying it, you knew it was gospel,
Right,
right?
right. And now I have no idea, right? Same thing for emails I get. Is this the actual person? Is what they're saying true? Like I have no idea, right? So we're entering an era of much reduced trust. And what that ends up meaning is you interact with people right? I trust you. I trust my wife and my kids and my friends and my coworkers. And that brings up something very interesting and important. And this is maybe a little less significant for some medium-sized businesses, but very significant for others. I had dinner a month ago with the chief risk officer of a major bank. You have heard the name. And he said, guess what happened this week, Alec? I said, what? He said, we found 4 people working at our bank that we thought were US citizens that were actually remoting in from North Korea.
What?
And they had scammed their way into jobs. And there's actually just an article about this in the Wall Street Journal recently about this. They had scammed their way into jobs through fake documentation, fake I-9s, fake passports, fake social security numbers, all that kind of stuff. And were actively working to hack this bank from the inside, exfiltrate client data, create backdoors to get into the software, all kinds of crazy stuff. My point is, if you've got a really big bank with 100,000 employees and they found 4 people in a month, how many are still there?
I think I read something about this because it said AI. The next scam for AI is job boards, like job websites, and I didn't understand why, but now it makes sense. I didn't understand
I would
what
say
the scam would be there, but now I guess.
Yeah, I would say that there are that about 25 to 50% of all job postings are fake. And I've talked to recruiters who say that almost half of applicants to jobs electronically are fake.
But what is okay?
Point.
But can you? It's not computing for me.
Yeah.
Why? Why would an applicant be fake? Is it to send?
Sure. So it could be this guy from North Korea, because what happens is they create tens of thousands of fake identities on LinkedIn, and maybe they apply to the same job 100 times, 100 different identities, and see which one gets accepted.
Okay.
They don't care, right? And then they send one guy, that same guy, in to do the interview or whatever, right? You see what I mean? So so that's what part of why that's happening.
But don't they have to send somebody in person to do this interview?
No, a lot of these are remote jobs. So one of the things that happened during COVID is even the big banks have roles which are remote only.
Okay.
I think that is going to change over time, now that this has kind of been discovered and is a thing. Or maybe you just say, look, on your first week of work, you got to show up in person
Yeah.
at the bank. Sorry, I don't care where you live. You got to show up in person. We need to. When I joined my first bank, which was First Boston back in the day, I was bonded. You know what? I don't even know if people know what bonding is anymore. That's where you get fingerprinted.
I had that when I worked on
They
Wall
do a
Street, I had that.
background. The FBI does a background check on you, and then the bank posts a bond in case you do anything bad. The clients get reimbursed. Like I don't even know if they do that anymore, to be honest. But I'm sure in many places they still fingerprint you
So
to make sure you're a real person.
So yeah, when I worked on Wall Street, when I took my Series 7, I had to get fingerprinted, 1, and then 2. Every time I was recruited by a different company, I had to go get my fingerprints done again.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
send them in.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the difference between being in tech and having your Series 7 and being a broker or a part of the broker dealer. You don't need a Series 7 to be a tech guy, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think what's going to happen is the level of physical security is just going to have to go up, right? To basically take that level of trust from, 20 to 50 and back, closer to 100. But that I think is the crisis. It's the crisis of trust right now.
I mean, even fingerprinting, that leads right back to it though, again, right? Because we're not going to send somebody to the post office to get fingerprinted or somewhere to get fingerprinted physically anymore, right? And then scan them in.
I don't know about that.
Oh, you think so? Because I'm thinking, what are they going to do? You can do fingerprints over your iPhone,
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of that I'm sure that tech is coming. I mean, we're just a software company. We background check everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because we have clients that are banks.
About it. When I went to get my clear, for those the airport access, I had to go down to like a physical location and get my biometrics checked.
Yeah,
exactly.
So maybe that's the way of the future.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And you could have a company like Clear. So Clear already has a side business authenticating people for social media. Like you'll see on LinkedIn, for example, Clear has said this is an actual person or whatever, right? So maybe that's kind of the wave of the future.
Well, it's funny you say that because Matt and I went to one of these, financial expos recently, and the CEO of Clear, it was Money 2020. You're right, and the CEO of Clear stated during his presentation that the future of Clear is applied through financial services.
Yeah, I buy that, and it may not be them that ends up winning. Sure. It could end up being Microsoft or Google or whoever, but they've got a good shot, right? They've got a lot of data.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I think
they're a crazy story. I believe they were bought out of bankruptcy.
They were. Yeah, I remember when they bankrupted. I mean, I was one of the first people to sign on because at the time I was working for a pretty big European bank and I was traveling 100 days a year. I'm like, I need to be able to get back into the States in 5 minutes, not an hour.
Yeah.
This is going to save me 20 hours a year. And paid my $100 or whatever. Then they promptly went bankrupt and then they got resurrected. And I think they even still had all my data. I had to pay another fee or something, but I didn't have to go back and get fingerprinted again. So that was helpful.
It's one of the biggest time hacks in the world, that and TSA pre-check and global entry. You need it.
Yeah.
It's a necessity.
Got to have it. If you travel a lot, you got to do it.
Yeah,
for sure.
So let's flash forward 10 years from now, right? We think there's going to be some type of new security system with AI. Mm-hmm. What do you think that's going to look like? I know Luigi kind of asked you before, but is it going to be biometrics? Is it going to be some type of maybe implant that somebody gets with a barcode inside of them? Right? You know how you have those bank tokens when you got to.
Yeah, I don't know. I think what's going to happen is that, one of the crises is trust and identity, right? Obviously. So not only are humans going to need a way to do that, AI agents are going to need a way to do that, right? So one of the things that Microsoft did recently is they said, you know what, we're going to use the Microsoft Entra ID system and process for agents, not just humans. So an agent will effectively have a login and be able to prove that it is itself, right? So that is a fascinating idea and probably kind of like headed towards the future. I don't think we're going to be using passwords in the future. It'll probably be you'll have a private and a public key, kind of like for encryption, as a human. And you'll be able to update that if you need to, if it gets stolen or whatever. So not like a social security number, which stays the same for the rest of your life. And then there's got to be some biometric components, right? Like iris scan, fingerprint, whatever. And then maybe something that that's actually very simple, like a PIN code or something like that, right? So, but I think it is going to be multiple things working together to prove that you are who you say you are.
Alec, what would you say would be the greatest security breach you've come across in your career?
Well, I think it was actually the RSA hack. RSA got hacked. The software for all the authentication tokens got stolen. So anybody, including people at the NSA who are using those security tokens, were all of a sudden vulnerable.
Wow.
So the biggest target for the Uber hackers is actually cybersecurity companies, right? Because if they can do that, and crack the code on something like an authenticator, then that opens up the world is their oyster.
It's the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, exactly. And it took them years to recover. In fact, the only time I hear those three letters together, RSA, is at RSA Cybersecurity every year. That's it. No, otherwise no one talks about them, right? It's just the conference. That's it.
Alec, there's that old Irish adage, great oaks from humble acorns do grow. And this acorn started in 1987 with your college thesis. I alluded to it earlier, but you wrote your thesis on the first neural network poker bot.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because
yeah, absolutely.
Matt's been known to dabble at the poker table from now and again.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? So I was basically teaching AI to play poker, bet, bluff, things like that. I never got it to more than kind of an average human, because obviously it's not going to know Matt's tells, right? That he kind of winks whenever he's got a good hand or whatever it is, right?
He usually orders a shot of tequila whenever he has 4 kings.
But what's super interesting is that online poker obviously boomed during COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And what was happening was they'd want 8 players at the table. They'd want 8 humans, and they get 6. And then there would be a delay for a couple of people to show up. They weren't starting the game, and people would just drop out. Right. So these games weren't starting. So they started adding poker bots to to fill out these tables, and then kick them out when humans showed up, just so they could start a game. And each of those poker bots could have been the best poker player in the world, because they are at this point. But instead, they gave them kind of personalities, right? They're like, oh, this guy bluffs a lot. This guy bets too much, because they just kind of wanted to make it more fun. They're not trying to make money with the poker bots. They're trying to start games earlier, right? Which is how they really make money, when the humans are betting.
That's one thing about online poker and anything online. I've always been very wary of it.
Yeah, because guess what? There are people out there running poker bots online. There are entire poker bot, networks out there, and it is an arms race to have the world's best poker bot, because you have a huge edge over the humans, right? You can count every card. You've got the odds down to the last 0.01%. Like, you are going to be better than humans.
Well, you
know exactly how much to bet.
So these gambling sites, though, they have to have some type of security on them.
They absolutely do. They have bot detectors and all kinds of different things like that. But so far, my guess, because I don't really know, is that there are still bots in there playing. And the way you do that is, obviously, you have a bot sitting over here on one computer, and you have a human typing stuff in, right? You just kind of checking the numbers. It would be kind of like, having an earpiece in Las Vegas, while you're playing blackjack. Like, someone's just telling you, okay, you should hit now. Oh no, you should stand. A deck is really 10 heavy. You should split those 10s or whatever, right? Like, it's just giving you an edge. Is it going to make you perfect? No. Are you going to be able to run 1,000 poker bots and make $1 million a day because you're not detected? No. But you can make a pretty good living, I would guess right now, kind of with that in between, what people call a centaur, where you're using a computer to enhance a human's ability. And if you're just on there playing a $5 poker by yourself, like the oft used phrase about poker is, if you're sitting at the poker table and you've been there for an hour and you don't know who the patsy is, you're the patsy, right? So, and that goes back to what you're talking about in terms of online poker. Like, you are very likely the patsy at that poker table.
I think that term that you use, centaur, is going to become a reality pretty soon. I think people are actually going to start enhancing themselves to even just keep up with AI, right? Or
I'm sure we'll see that. I mean, I think there's
field.
already wearables, then there'll be things like the glasses and earpieces, and it's going to happen, right? I mean, I went and tried, I was getting an old computer repaired at Apple, and tried their Vision Pro. And look, it's the demo. It was amazing. Like, I'm not going to buy one for $3,000 or whatever, but that is where we're headed. When that's $300 or free from AT&T, and I can put it on like a pair of glasses, like, I'm going to buy one.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. And then it has an earpiece, and then you're walking around and it's going, I'll tell you a story. So a friend of mine was taking a drive cross country and goes, this is freaking boring. And then it was like, I wonder if I can use ChatGPT as my tour guide. Turn ChatGPT on their phone, turn on the voice mode, and so just tell me what's around me. And it was, on the right, in 1822, there was a battle in that field over there. On the left is the oldest church in Indiana, or whatever. It became the tour guide.
What a smart use of AI. That's awesome.
Isn't that incredible? It's like best tour guide ever, knew what everything was. Like, just nuts, right? So my point is that it's going to be that on steroids, right? It'll be like, I'll walk in somewhere, it goes, hey, that's Matt. Remember you recorded that podcast with him on May 30th, and he really likes to play poker.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you won't have to remember anything. Like, the AI is going to do it for you. And by the way, if you thought, remember the question, is Google making us stupid? And the answer was yes. Like, that's AI on steroids. Like, AI is going to make us stupid for sure, right? Like, kids aren't going to be able to write anymore. Like, an AI write it for me. Like, it's bad. It's going to be bad.
Sam Altman and OpenAI they just acquired Johnny Ive's company for 6.5 billion, I believe. Right. Yeah. And the idea is for them to make another device. We don't know what this device is, but it's some type of AI device that's to integrate with ChatGPT, and it's just going to be your co-pilot, pretty much like Microsoft's co-pilot. But anywhere you go, it's going to be on you the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's going to be like a button with a camera and a microphone and an earpiece or something like that. So you can walk around. It'll talk to you. It can see what you're doing.
I don't know about you.
Something like that.
I don't know about you, but I use ChatGPT. I know everybody has their own flavor that they like of whatever AI system, but I have to use it probably 15 to 20 times a day right now.
Yeah. I mean, we have our own AI system, obviously, because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And the key there is it's secure, right? I can type in my social security number. It doesn't matter, right? Because it's all inside our firewall. And that's really the big risk. The other big risk we didn't talk about for business in terms of AI is privacy, right? And I was at a conference recently, and someone got up on stage and said, this is so cool. I'm putting all my bank information into Perplexity. And another guy who I happen to know raises his hand and goes, do you know that that's not safe or secure? Like Perplexity literally says that they own your data. Like, read the license agreement. They own what you send them, and they own what they send you back. And by the way, like, if they reveal that data for trading purposes, it has client data. Like, you basically just did something which was illegal, right? And the guy's like passing out on stage, became like white as a sheet, like, oh my God, I can't believe that, right? So there's just a lot of lack of knowledge about that. But what I would tell, everyone, including business owners, is you can't put anything confidential or any client information into the public versions of these software, not Perplexity, not ChatGPT. Look, if you have your own version that's firewalled on your own server, great, go for it. Do what you want, right? But you've got multiple risks sending it outside your firewall or just typing into the public version, part of which it could just be exposed, but part of which also, what if they get hacked, right? Like Claude just got hacked, and they revealed the initial prompt that Claude uses, which is like 10,000 words or something. Like all these guys are going to get hacked at some point, right? You want to own your data. You want your own data inside your own firewall. It's just going to reduce your risk by like a factor of 100.
Listen,
right?
I'm sold. I'm putting everything on a credit card and all my money into a physical vault. That's it. And I'll send cash in the mail. I'll take that risk. It sounds a lot less.
We've come full circle in a few generations, huh?
Yeah, pretty wild, right? People are going to start hiding cash under the mattress again, right?
But what is intelligence? I remember vividly, I don't know why this analogy just came to me, but I remember having like a 4th or 5th grade social studies teacher, and she made us memorize the capital of the 50 states. We have to memorize that. Does that make me smart? No, it's memorization, right? Yeah. But how about I'm having a conversation with someone who is in Arizona? Do I take the time to Google or search AI to see what the capital of Arizona is? Maybe there is something important about having some baseline knowledge. Like we're having a conversation here today, and the idea is small business owners are going to have a takeaway on how they can best protect their business. Okay. Do they not listen to Alec and what he's saying? Because he could say, well, when I do want to protect my business, I'm just going to ask AI. No, pay attention over these last 30 minutes and you'll learn how to do it yourself. Like I don't know where the gray area is between intelligence and artificial intelligence.
Yeah. I think it's creativity, right? Because you have to start these things with a prompt. So the spark has to come from somewhere, right? In order to find the answers that you're looking for. And I think it's maybe not the information itself, but it's the critical thinking involved to get you to the end of to get you to the goal.
The AI as a tool, not as a means.
Yeah. Well, the critical thinking part is super important. First of all, artificial intelligence is now only a marketing term. It's not even, doesn't really mean anything anymore. And it's not intelligence, right? It's really, it's a statistical process, right? If you look at how large language models are built, what they're basically doing is predicting what's the next word, right? And that's not intelligence. It's not thinking. It is not conscious. Now, what I do think is going to happen in the next few years is those models are going to be so good, it's going to fool some people into thinking that it's conscious or reasoning or doing critical thinking.
That's a whole other problem.
It's not. It's not really. It's going to take decades to get to the point where we go beyond statistical AI to true kind of thinking AI, and that can't just be GPT models, right? It's likely to be some amalgam of technology that's available today, plus quantum computing. Like I don't know if you saw this, but there was a paper from MIT last year where they showed that quantum tunneling occurs in the human brain. And they basically proved that was one of the sources of human consciousness. So if that's true in the case, then humans are probably smart enough to figure out, like, how do we do that with computers and quantum computers, right? I think that is plausible. It's going to take a while before we get the real version of that, but I do think it will happen.
It's going to be an interesting time. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Alec, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell the audience where they can get in touch with you and your company if they have any security needs or cybersecurity needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we focus on cybersecurity specifically for AI, especially Gen AI. And the website is AIC for corporate risk.com. And we're at artificial intelligence risk on LinkedIn. So super easy to find us. And as you can see, there won all kinds of awards and fun stuff like that. And we primarily focus on integrating high-risk AI safely. So that's things like banks and finance, healthcare, stuff like that. And love to chat. And a lot of what we do is just educational. Like you just heard, just helping people understand what's safe, what's not safe. Love to chat, talk at a lot of conferences, talk to the regulators all the time. And US and Europe, that's where I go.
Alec, thank you so much. I do have one question before I let you run. I know you have your own AI system, but if you had to pick one of the top ones out there right now, which one would be a go-to?
Yeah, I think what Microsoft has done with Foundry and access to the different models there is great because it's all no code. You can fine tune a model no code, things like that. Again, I think you got to be very careful about safety and security when you're using any kind of third party tool. But that's the one to me that changed the game recently.
Thank you so much, everybody. That's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you in the next episode.
Let's go!